As I said yesterday in our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast, there's one more event that must take place before the kingdom, the eternal kingdom, is set up. We found the Lord has come and He set up a kingdom on the earth, a millennial kingdom, and that is briefly mentioned earlier in chapter 20 of Revelation that we won't actually look at today. But then we find that He has come and He has defeated Satan, who makes one final attempt to overthrow the Jews and Jerusalem and Christ. He fails just with very quickly a fire comes out of heaven and destroys all those who are on his team, all the human beings who are in rebellion against God at this point, which is amazing to think that after 1,000 years of rule by the benevolent, perfect, righteous King Jesus, that the world still, many people in the world still are willing to oppose him and challenge him and try to overthrow him. It just shows the depravity of the human heart. Satan leads that charge. He deceives them, as he does throughout his history. That's his MO, to deceive people. He's very, very good at it, of course. He's had a lot of practice. But he himself now is thrown into the lake of fire. So there's one more event, however, before the kingdom age begins, the final eternal kingdom of the Lord. And that is a final judgment found in Revelation chapter 20, verses 11 to 15, which is what we often call the judgment seat of Christ, or the great white throne judgment. Because here the Lord sits on a great white throne. He says, "Then I saw a great white throne," verse 11, "and him who sat on it, from whose presence the earth and the heavens fled away, and no place was found for them." So this seems to be a great white throne that is not resting on earth or in heaven. Apparently it somehow is resting in the space itself. And he said, "I saw the dead and the great and the small standing before the throne. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged for the things which are written in the books according to the deeds," or their deeds. And so we find now a great judgment of those that we believe here are the unbelievers of all ages. The believers have already been judged. We found that their robes have been washed white in chapter 19, and in chapter 20 they have already been judged. They have been given their rewards. They are with the Lord, purified with Him. So the only people that remain to be judged are those that do not know Christ, those who have resisted Him and rejected Him. And so we find that they now gather before Him. Scripture teaches that it is appointed unto man once to die, and after that, the judgment. But that doesn't necessarily mean the judgment takes place immediately upon our death. For here we have, at the end of time, as far as this world is concerned in its present form, at the end of that time, the Lord is now going to have this final judgment of all the lost of all ages. And they stand before the Lord, and books are open. So this is an indication there is a record of their life, how they've lived their lives. But primarily, the big issue is, have they come to Christ? And it speaks of the book of life. And there is the registry of all those who know Christ. And those whose names are not found in the book of life will now be facing eternal judgment and death. It's a solemn and awesome thing to consider, that all these people who have rejected the Lord throughout their lifetime now face judgment because of that rejection. We know from other places, such as the book of Luke, that there is a degree of punishment in eternity for the lost. Those who knew God's will and rejected Him out of hand, out of rebelliousness, are going to face a much stronger condemnation than those that did not know His will, who perhaps never heard of the gospel or of Jesus Christ. And so they are going to be judged less harshly. And also, I believe the books are open here to indicate the kind of life people have lived. All unbelievers live unrighteously, but some have lived much more horrible lives than others. And I believe there will be a degree of punishment based upon how people lived with the moral code they knew in their own heart, with what they knew from nature about God. And so there will be these books that record or register the lives of these people, and there will be judgment based upon what is found there. We go on, though, in the story, in the account. It says in verse 14, "And death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire." This is the second death, the lake of fire. So this speaks of both physical and spiritual death. separation from God for all eternity. That's what the word death means. And it's going to be called the second death here in the lake of fire. And if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. What this lake of fire is like, I think, is only guesswork on our part. I don't think we can actually crystallize in our thinking what that is like. We're going to leave that to the Lord and do the best we can with what we've got in a passage like this. But we do know it is eternal destruction, eternal separation from the Lord. It's described as awful. It's a place no one would ever want to go. You don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. We don't Christ, that they might have their names written in the Lamb's Book of Life and never have to face the second death.